It was called the most terrible crime ever committed in Indiana, and half a century later, that title still holds. On October 26, 1965, police found Sylvia Likens' emaciated corpse, covered with more than 150 wounds ranging from burns to cuts, sprawled on a filthy mattress in the Indianapolis home of 37-year-old Gertrude Baniszewski, mother of 7 and the architect of the girl's gruesome death. Sylvia Marie Likens, January 3, 1949 to October 26, 1965, was the third child of carnival workers Lester Cecil Likens and his wife Elizabeth, Betty, Francis. She was born between two sets of fraternal twins, Diana and Danny, 2 years older, and Jenny and Benny, 1 year younger, Jenny disabled by polio. Likens' parents' marriage was unstable. The family moved frequently, and the parents had financial difficulties. Likens and her sister Jenny were often boarded out or forced to live with relatives, such as their grandmother, so that their schoolwork would not suffer while their parents were on the road. To earn money, Likens babysat and ironed the same kind of work that was done by Gertrude Baniszewski. In July 1965, Sylvia and Jenny Likens were living with their mother, Betty, in Indianapolis, Indiana. During that time, Betty was arrested and jailed for shoplifting. Lester Likens, who had recently separated from his wife, arranged for his daughters to board with Gertrude Baniszewski, the mother of the girl's new friend Paula Baniszewski, aged 17, and Paula's 6 siblings Stephanie 15, John 12, Marie 11, Shirley 10, James 8, and few months old Dennis Lee Wright Jr. Although the Baniszewskis were poor, Lester didn't pry into the condition of the house as he reported at the trial, and he encouraged Baniszewski to straighten his daughters out. Lester Likens agreed to pay Gertrude $20 a week in exchange for her care of the Likens girls. When his payment arrived late, Gertrude beat the Likens girls on their bare buttocks with paddles. Gertrude soon focused her abuse exclusively on Sylvia. She accused her of stealing candy that she had bought, and humiliated her when she admitted that she once had a boyfriend. Gertrude's daughter, Paula, who was pregnant at the time, kicked Sylvia in the genitals and accused her of being pregnant. Later medical examination proved that Sylvia was not pregnant and could not have been. Gertrude began allowing her older children to beat Likens and repeatedly push her downstairs for entertainment. During a church function, she force-fed Sylvia a hot dog overloaded with condiments. She vomited afterwards, which she was later forced to consume. Gertrude also accused Sylvia of prostitution and delivered misogynistic sermons about the filthiness of prostitutes and women in general. Sylvia was later accused of spreading rumors within Arsenal Technical High School that Paula and Stephanie Baniszewski were prostitutes. This supposedly provoked Stephanie's boyfriend, Coy Hubbard, to physically attack Sylvia. Afterwards, Coy, and several other classmates and local boys visited the Baniszewski residence to assist Gertrude in abusing Sylvia. Gertrude encouraged Coy, her children, and neighborhood children to torment Sylvia, including, among other things, Paula Baniszewski once beat Likens in the face with such force that she broke her own wrist. She later had to wear a cast, which she used to further beat Likens. Gertrude Baniszewski later forced Jenny to hit her sister, beating her if she did not comply. Meanwhile, Raymond and Phyllis Vermillion, a middle-aged couple who moved next door, saw Gertrude to be an ideal caretaker for their 2 children. They visited the Baniszewski residence on 2 occasions, where they witnessed Paula, with Gertrude's approval, abusing Sylvia and boasting about it in front of them. The Vermillions refused to report the abuse to the authorities out of fear on both occasions. Gertrude eventually forbids Sylvia to attend school after she confessed to having stolen a gym suit from the school when Gertrude would not buy a gym suit for her. She brutally beat and whipped Sylvia and did the same for Jenny after remembering that she supposedly stole a tennis shoe. Baniszewski then switched the topic to the evils of premarital sex and brutally kicked Sylvia multiple times in her vagina. She also burned all of her fingers with matches and further whipped her. Likens eventually became incontinent due to the severity of the torture. She was denied access to the bathroom and thus was forced to urinate herself. As punishment for her incontinence, Gertrude threw and locked her in the basement. Throughout her captivity, Gertrude frequently, with the assistance of her children and their friends, restrained Sylvia in a bathtub filled with scalding water and rubbed salt onto her burns. She was often kept naked and rarely fed. At times, Gertrude and her 12-year-old son John Jr. would make Sylvia eat her own feces, as well as urine and feces from the diaper of Gertrude Baniszewski's 1-year-old son. She also made abusing Sylvia a pastime, charging the neighborhood children 5 cents to see the display of Sylvia's naked body and tie, beat, burn and mutilate her. Sylvia attempted to alert the neighbors for help by screaming and hitting the walls of the basement with a spade, ultimately to no avail. Sylvia was often deprived of water. Jenny later speculated, during her court testimony, that Sylvia was unable to produce tears due to dehydration. On October 22, Sylvia was forced by John to eat a bowl of soup with her fingers. John quickly took away the bowl when she attempted to eat it. Gertrude eventually allowed her to sleep upstairs, under the condition that she learned not to wet herself. That night, Sylvia whispered to Jenny to give her a glass of water before falling asleep. On October 23, Gertrude discovered that Sylvia had urinated herself. As punishment, she was forced to masturbate with an empty glass Coca-Cola bottle in front of Baniszewski's children. After that, she stripped Sylvia naked and carved the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," onto Sylvia's abdomen with a heated needle. When Gertrude was unable to finish the branding, she had Richard Hobbs finish. Hobbs continued to brand Sylvia as Gertrude calmly took Jenny to the groceries. Richard Hobbs and 10-year-old Shirley Baniszewski then used an iron poker in an attempt to burn the letter S into Sylvia's chest. The burn scar ended up looking like the number 3. Gertrude later taunted Sylvia about how she would never be able to marry a man due to the words carved onto her stomach. Sylvia was taken back to the basement, where Coy Hubbard arrived to tie her up and slam her body against the walls 6 to 7 times. That night, Likens confided to her sister, "I'm going to die. I can tell." The next day, Gertrude woke Likens, and then dictated a letter to her, intending to mislead her parents into believing that she had run away. The letter also tried to frame a group of anonymous boys for abusing and mutilating Likens after she supposedly agreed to have sexual relations with them. After Sylvia finished the letter, Gertrude formulated a plan to have John Jr. and Jenny take Sylvia to a nearby forested area and leave her there to die. On October 25, Sylvia tried to escape after overhearing Gertrude's plan to blindfold her and dump her body in Jimmy's Forest, a wooded area nearby. Sylvia fled to the front door, but due to her extensive injuries, Gertrude caught her in time. On October 26, after multiple beatings, burnings, and scalding baths, Sylvia Likens died of a brain hemorrhage, shock, and malnutrition. She was 16 years old. When she realized that Sylvia was dead, Gertrude sent Richard Hobbs to call the police from a nearby payphone. When police arrived, Gertrude Baniszewski handed them the letter she had forced Sylvia to write a few days previously. Before the police officers left the house, however, Jenny Likens approached them and said, "Get me out of here and I'll tell you everything." Her statement, combined with the discovery of Sylvia's body, prompted the officers to arrest Gertrude, Paula, Stephanie and John Baniszewski, Richard Hobbs, and Coy Hubbard for murder. Other neighborhood children present at the time, Mike Monroe, Randy Lepper, Darlene McGuire, Judy Duke, and Anna Sisko, were arrested for injury to person. Baniszewski, her children, Hobbs, and Hubbard were held without bail pending their trials. An examination and autopsy of Sylvia's body revealed numerous burns, bruising, and muscle and nerve damage. All of her fingernails were also broken backwards and most of the skin's outer layer peeled off. Her severely mutilated body led authorities to initially believe that it was the work of an anonymous madman. In her death throes, Likens bit through her lips, partially severing each of them. Her vaginal cavity was nearly swollen shut, although an examination of the canal determined that her hymen was still intact, which meant it was possible she was still a virgin, discrediting Gertrude's assertions that Sylvia was a prostitute and her insistence that she was pregnant. The official cause of death was brain swelling, internal hemorrhaging of the brain, and shock from severe and prolonged damage to her skin. During the highly publicized trial, Gertrude Baniszewski denied being responsible for Sylvia's death. She pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. She claimed that she was too distracted by her ill health and depression to control her children. 4 minors who took part in the abuse of Likens were also put on trial. They were Paula Baniszewski, aged 17, John Baniszewski, aged 13, Richard Hobbs, aged 15, Coy Hubbard, aged 15. The attorneys for the minors claimed that they had been pressured by Gertrude. When Gertrude's 11-year-old daughter, Marie Baniszewski, was called to the stand as a witness for the defense, she broke down and admitted that she had been forced to heat the needle with which Richard Hobbs had carved Sylvia's skin. She also testified that she had seen her mother beating Sylvia and forcing her into the basement. In his closing statement, Baniszewski's lawyer said, "I condemn her for being a murderess, but I say she's not responsible because she's not all here." He tapped his head to make his point about her state of mind. On May 19, 1966, Gertrude Baniszewski was convicted of first-degree murder. She was spared the death penalty and was sentenced to life imprisonment. Paula Baniszewski, who had given birth to a daughter during the trial, was convicted of second-degree murder. She was also sentenced to life imprisonment. Richard Hobbs, Coy Hubbard, and John Baniszewski Jr. were all convicted of manslaughter and given to 2 to 21-year prison sentences.